Holy One, break open this beautiful ancient sacred text about salt and light. Help us feel that Jesus is saying it directly to us, siblings with the first disciples. Let it animate and expand our spirits and feel that we have everything we need to do what's next. In the hearing of this preaching or in the wisdom of our own hearts. Amen. For 148 years, people have been gathering at First Congregational Church of Berkeley. Our first worship service was held on June 24th, 1874 at the Berkeley Hotel on the corner of Bancroft and Telegraph. Our church had 3 founders. The most famous, Dr. Samuel Willey, also founded UC Berkeley 2 years earlier. The second was Reverend E.S. Lacey, who preached the first sermon. And the third was Henry Peterson. And I'll add his wife Caroline, because why should the women get left out of the record when they are in the room where it happened? Henry was a gardener and a dairyman, both typical trades in early Berkeley, which was made up of small farms and ranches and really wasn't even a city yet. 14 years later, Henry, who was also an inventor, would become a minor celebrity for devising the lawnmower grass-catching pan. He later sold a 2/3 interest in his patent to 2 local businessmen for $15,000, a princely sum at the time which would have bought 5 nice homes. Henry and Caroline Peterson were African American. He was born in New York in the early 1840s before coming to Berkeley to make a life. Both before and after he made his small fortune, he focused his energy on building and building up his community. He not only helped found our church, he also rescued an important African American newspaper in the Bay Area, The Elevator, from an early demise. He helped incorporate Berkeley as a city and voted in every election. Henry and Caroline didn't move up or move out when they came into their wealth, but they stayed living in this relatively humble neighborhood, always within a few blocks of our church, for their entire lives. In January 1906, at the age of 62, he helped found the North Oakland Baptist Mission, just in time to serve the thousands of earthquake refugees who would seek shelter in the East Bay 3 months later. He died later that year of a heart attack walking in his back door. In his obituary, the Berkeley Daily Gazette called him one of the best-known and pioneer residents of Berkeley. Caroline died 4 months later, perhaps of heartbreak. The Gazette said of Caroline, Mrs. Peterson was widely known throughout her hometown and enjoyed the respect and goodwill of a host of friends. She left 10% of their estate to First African Methodist Episcopal Church and another 10% to the Home for Aged and Infirm Colored People near Mills College. The rest went to her friends. This past week, I wrote in the CARILLON that I'm not normally a history person. I'm so focused on the future and what needs doing next that I rarely look back. But I'm intrigued by the way that history intrudes into the present, by how it repeats or rhymes, and particularly how the DNA of organizations, families, and cultures asserts itself at key moments in time. I feel enormously proud here at the beginning of Black History Month to know that one of our 3 founders was a Black man and a woman, probably more than one. Not that I get to take any credit, but it seems to say something auspicious that nearly 150 years ago, we were the kind of community that shared power and respect in a way our nation rarely has. And I wonder what happened after that founding. Did Henry and Caroline choose not to leave money to the church they helped found for a reason? Was there a falling out or a freezing out? Or perhaps they just gave their tithes where they perceived the greatest need, with a growing population of African American residents in the East Bay. Maybe they thought our church was doing just fine and they wanted to lift up organizations that were struggling, which I certainly understand. I wish I could be a fly on the wall in 1874 at that first worship service up the street. How did it feel? Who got to speak? What did they speak about? They were idealists, as all religious founders are. What were those ideals? How did they live them out? In what ways did they fall short of the people they wanted to be, of the community and church they wanted to be? I wish I could be a fly on the wall in 1923 when we laid the cornerstone for this sanctuary and see who was there, what our church was becoming. And again in April 1942, when Japanese American neighbors gathered at our church in Pilgrim Hall that burned down to board the buses to the internment camps. This is another point of pride in our congregation, that we were able to offer our Berkeley kin dignity and respect through the ordeal, as well as childcare, hot tea, and food. But I confess that I have mixed feelings about the role our majority white church played in making such a travesty of institutional racism and xenophobia something more palatable and respectable. How did our spiritual ancestors feel in those moments? Did they serve that tea with a pit in their stomach or pride in their hearts? We know that history is subjective, usually reported by the victors, and that we whitewash the past to make heroes of ourselves or our forebears. Even our sacred texts are not immune. As Kelly preached last week, despite what the book of Acts reports, the earliest Christian communities did not entirely hold all things in common. Just a few decades after Jesus preached about being salt of the earth and light of the world, a city on a hill, his disciples were only kind of, sort of salty and lit, not quite a true mutual aid society yet. I guess it's perverse good news that no religious community has ever really lived up to its ideals. Not us, and not one so close in time to the actual preaching of Jesus. But it's still important to have ideals. We never get anywhere if we gave into cynicism, if we decided people are no darn good before we'd even begun. We need dreams and visions. We need to believe that we have the capacity to make our dreams come true. And then we need a little something extra beyond just the capacity. We need heart and will. We need faith in God and in ourselves. Which is why it's so important that Jesus didn't make his sermon conditional. He didn't say, you will be the salt of the earth. You might become the light of the world if you would only start a multiracial church in a racist society and make sure it stays that way for 150 years. Stand up to the U.S. military on behalf of your neighbors, even if it means being thrown in jail for sedition. And hold all things in common, selling all your property and giving the money to the capital campaign. Jesus didn't say, you will be the salt of the earth. He said, you are the salt of the earth. He said, you are the light of the world. In John's gospel, he said, I am the light of the world, which is to say, he thinks that we are like him. He's saying, you have my spirit, my power. We are precious, precious salt of the earth. We preserve and protect and nourish and help people be more like themselves. We give life flavor. We're a city on a hill. We draw eyes up and people out. We have this light. We are this light for a purpose. We shine this light before others to remind them that they are lit too. Inspired by our goodness, our optimism, our open-handedness, our resilience, our faith, our generosity, our love, and our belief that God made everyone lit. So we do what light does. We guide others through the dark like street lights at night. We warn of danger like a lighthouse near the rocks. We bring joy like Christmas lights on an evergreen tree, like a disco ball on a dance floor. A friend of mine, Brian McLaren, you may enjoy his books, just wrote a new book called Do I Stay Christian? Just reading the table of contents, I started to cry because it's full of painful truth. Part 1 is an answer to the question, do I stay Christian? No. Some of the chapter titles are Because Christianity Has Been Vicious to Its Mother, Judaism. Because of Christianity's Suppression of Dissent, Christian against Christian Violence. Because of Christianity's High Global Death Toll, Crusader Colonialism. Because of the White Christian Old Boys Network. It goes on. And as much as I love Christianity because it's given me my vocation, relationships, and practices that have changed and saved my life, everything Brian wrote in part 1 is true. But then we come to part 2. Yes. Some chapter titles read, Because Leaving Hurts Allies and Helps Their Opponents. Because of our legendary founder. Because innocence is an addiction and solidarity is the cure. I'm going to read that one again because it took me a minute. Because innocence is an addiction and solidarity is the cure. And finally, because where else would I go? For 148 years, people have gathered here. We have not all come for the same reasons or with the same beliefs. We have not followed that legendary founder perfectly or even well. But we are still here. We are still salty and still keeping the lights on. We are here because people are lonely and we give them a way to belong. We are here because people need safe space in hard times to rest, be quiet, sing, dance, and eat for free. We are here because people need to learn and be challenged to grow outside their comfort zones, and because God is still speaking, still revealing what is good and true and beautiful. We're here not to rest on the laurels of the past, but to build something new for the future, for ourselves and for everybody coming after us. And we also build for the simple reason that it burned down, and we either have to finish the job or build back better. 148 years ago, they gathered, bought, built, moved, built again, and kept building. We might be tempted to think of those as the glory days when the pews and the Sunday school were full, there was plenty of money and no conflict. The truth is, it took them 50 years after that first worship service to build this sanctuary. They worked, and they waited, and they saved, and they gave sacrificially for it. We also know that for at least the first 100 years, the church benefited from the free labor of many women who were largely excluded from the paid workforce and were looking for an outlet for their skills and intelligence. Amen? Say amen if you've given your free labor to this church. We are heirs of their love, labor, and generosity. Because of what they built, whatever our personal financial circumstances, together we are property owners in Berkeley, which is kind of an amazing thing. We are recipients of a great generational transmission of wealth, tax-free. Did you know that all the U.S. churches together hold $1.2 trillion in collective wealth? What could we do if we mobilize that wealth according to our Christian ideals? Now, here at our church, we're wealth holders on a smaller scale. We have an inheritance, and at every annual meeting and throughout the year, we get to decide what to do with it. According to our insurance company, I forgot to fact check with Mo before this, but I think our church is appraised at about $18 million. Is that the ballpark, Mo, what we're worth, our building and land? Thumbs up. $18 million. That's insane. We could divest, we could sell it all and give the money to the poor, and Luke's Jesus would doubtless approve. And in a few years, this piece of land would likely be another dorm for UC Berkeley. Not the worst idea. Or we can keep building, keep gathering, keep growing, keep welcoming, keep feeding, keep offering dignity in the midst of distress, keep inventing, keep defying the laissez-faire and the cynical status quo, keep loving across every barrier and boundary that humans devise, keep on being salt and light and the city on a hill. 6 years ago, we lost so much, and the task before us was so mighty. When I think of the time and money we spent just to get our global insurance companies to do right by our relatively little and powerless church, it makes my heart hurt. But finally, they paid us back, and we were ready to lay a new foundation. And then a second disaster struck. Last year's inflation added 20% to our building costs. But I believe God is using this particular disaster for good, to make us aware of our status as heirs. Back in 2016, when so much burned down, we could have walked away from the whole thing, sold off the land, started something new in the burbs, someplace with less crime and better parking. But we didn't. Certainly there was inertia to carry us forward here, a sense of our past that gave us hope for our future. But there was something else too, a desire to build right here, not for ourselves, but for everyone around us, to keep a stake here in this city, shoulder to shoulder with the university, that portal to possibility. Now, we have enough money saved to build 7/8 of a new church in the Bay Area. We are already the salt of the earth and the light of the world, Jesus said. We have the capacity to do this. Do we have the heart and the will? Most of us will only get to be part of an enterprise like this once in our lifetimes. This might be it. And in the words of Sweet Honey in the Rock, the soundtrack of Black transcendence, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Will you sing it with me if you know the song? And if you don't, it's real easy. Just one line. We are the ones we've been waiting for. 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 So the ancestors can hear us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for.